Welcome to the second video in Write Women Back into History 2015. Today I'm going to show you what I mean by degendering the language in a Wikipedia entry. As I introduced in my first video, a recent study noticed that women's pages were far more likely to contain references to women's sex or familial status than those that were about men. Today I'm going to be working with the entry for Women Strike for Peace. This is an interesting example because, of course, the very name of the group, Women Strike for Peace, includes the word women. The group also relied on what we would call a maternalist peace rhetoric, which is to say they positioned women as mothers or potential mothers and used that as a rhetorically powerful voice in the critique of foreign policy and in particular nuclear tests. However, when I started reading through this article, which has another problem we'll come back and clean up later in citations, I was struck by the fact Women Strike for Peace is a United States women's peace activist group. In 1961, at the height of the Cold War, about 50,000 women brought together by Women Strike for Peace marched in 60 cities. It was the largest national women's peace protest. I started wondering, really, do we need all these women? In particular, because I'm familiar with this group and the pretty standard text on it, I knew that Amy Swerdlow frequently referred to the members of Women Strike for Peace. I prefer that to the gendered women. And so one of the things I would perhaps do is go through and edit, in particular by the time we get to down here, because this just becomes incredibly repetitive, the women, and we've already had above extensive emphasis of the fact that the group was comprised of women. So I've edited, I would go in here, and you can see the wiki markup, right? And I would start just reading through. So perhaps we would say, on November 1st, 1961, Women Strike for Peace marshaled 50,000 members to march in 60 cities. We would leave it's the largest national peace march because that is significant, right? But again, about 1,500 protesters led by Dagmar Wilson, we might say, instead of women. And I would continue. Here we go, for example. These women were moved. These activists were moved. Here we get to a really interesting point. As I said, one of the interesting aspects of Women's Strike for Peace was the fact that it was comprised of a group that relied largely on its maternalist rhetoric. It also relied on the class status and the race of its members. In other words, there was a pretty complicated politics of respectability going on here, with these women being almost untouchable because of their middle class white lady status. So I would not want to take that out. That is important, right? Down here, for example, though, the roots of the organization lay in the traditional female culture. As a scholar of women's history, I would not be comfortable with that sort of description. I would probably want to replace that with the roles allotted to women who were white, middle class, for example. So this might be someplace where we'd want to actually do some rewriting to get rid of some of this gendered language. And I would just keep proceeding through here until I had figured out really how much of this women I wanted to take out and how much I wanted to leave in. Now this also becomes tricky then because, of course, as you know, when you edit Wikipedia, you have to say. So I may say something like degendered language here. And I've only really started doing this, so I'm not sure how editors in Wikipedia may jump on this or not. I guess we'll see after our March 9th through the 13th efforts to write women back into history. Look for more YouTube videos with the same hashtag, WWBN numeral 2H, and I look forward to seeing what you do.